Welcome to Unlocked, a NAMFS podcast, Episode 2, Inside the Isle Institute.
Thanks, Kelly. My name is Eric Miller. I'm the Executive Director of NAMFS. We are really excited about our podcast. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Marissa.
Hi, everyone. Kelly, Eric, thank you so much for having us today. We're truly honored. And Cade and I are here in our ISLE capacity today at the American Institute of Servicing Legal Executives. We're very excited and to jump into any questions you may have for us. I'm going to hand it over to Cade. Cade?
Thank you, Marissa. I'm Cade Holleman. In my day job, I'm the Chief Development Officer at Paget Law Group, and I'm a co-founder of ISLE Institute, where Marissa has served for almost 2 years now, excuse me, as our board chair, our inaugural board chair of the Institute. Kelly and Eric, thank you for having us. We're thrilled to be here. We've participated with you all in the past on some work that ISLE has done, and I think last year we got to come to your annual conference, which was a great experience for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was great to have you present on the panel and talk about all the accomplishments you all have built at ISLE. ISLE is relatively a newer organization in our industry, the default delinquency industry. And man, in a few short years, maybe 2.5, not even 3 years, y'all have accomplished a lot of objectives you had set out for yourself. So building on this, membership group that you've established, what were the key factors that made you so successful in such a short amount of time?
Well, I've already said that we truly are in an industry where there's so many knowledgeable individuals and also passionate for that matter. So we wanted to take those two characteristics and put it together in one organization. And so you can see that from our advisory board by having former heads of agencies along with heads of servicing and also vendors as well. And then even in our cross-section leadership, we have heads of servicers again, heads of different vendors, along with law firms. So really just taking all those industries together and combining them and putting all the requisite leaders from each different background and letting them talk about different things and really, talking through things and saying, okay, well, why is this important? Why should we focus on this? And how do we feel about this? Really creating like a think tank in terms of going to the agencies and being like, well, this is from this perspective and this is from this perspective, and providing a unified front. So it's been really amazing to see it really grow from November 2023, right, Cade? I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. And I always get really excited whenever we have like really passionate phone calls. I'm like, I really enjoyed hearing everybody's opinions and I have so many important takeaways. Mm-hmm. So Cade, I'm going to let you jump in if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I think Marissa hit the nail on the head. This November will be the 2-year anniversary of ISLE, but I think when I look at what I believe really drove the success of the Institute over the last 2 years, was our commitment from the very beginning to narrow the focus. We talked broadly in the beginning about not trying to be everything to everybody and really siloing our focus on what we felt like the gap was. And that was regulatory policy and working with the agencies to help with that translation between the industry and the government. There's a lot of great resources out there in the market, from exceptional conferences and business development and magazine and all of these other things that typical trades do. And they're doing those really well. So we decided in the beginning, that's not the area that we were going to compete with. There's no need to try to recreate what those other outlets are already doing so well. There was a narrow opportunity for a better back and forth between industry and agency. And that's where we felt like ISLE could really move us forward. And to Marissa's point, pulling together the right personalities, the passionate leaders, the people who are committed to doing this for the entirety of their careers, the subject matter experts. Putting all of those people in the same room, I think, is really where the magic came. So I'm very, very proud of, our commitment to keep a narrow focus on what we're doing and not let that creep sort of, let the mission of ISLE bleed into other things. I think that's really where I think the magic was for us.
I like that suggestion of trying not to be all things to everybody and narrowing the focus. I think that's a good lesson learned. I'm going to take back to the board of directors at NAMFS. I think similar to your membership, a lot of our members view themselves as competitors with the other members in the room. And so we have a challenge of getting them to share freely. You know, law similarly, and the things IEL Institute is advocating for, you know, can be seen as competitive and protective of information. How did you guys overcome the natural resistance to sharing knowledge in your groups?
So I'll jump in. I don't think there was any resistance. I mean, right away, we function on the belief that knowledge is power, right? And that everybody should have the same information that's publicly available at their fingertips, right? And so for us, it wasn't resistance. It was very natural. And I'll let Cade jump in too if he wants to add anything on that. But I mean, we were very happy to be like, okay, this just came out from so-and-so agency, or this just came out from so-and-so agency, or you may find this interesting that an agency just published, because everybody should have these resources. They're publicly available. And so it's important that everybody, A, knows that it was recently published, and B, where to find it, because we all operate within the same industry. And if we all have the same information, it helps with the conversation in terms of, well, what should be discussed with the agencies, because then everybody has the same information that is publicly available. Cade?
Yeah, I think, when we're looking at that sort of data collection, right? That's how we always phrased it from the industry perspective. One, from, our role at Paget, we had to open up the hood and provide whatever we were asking for as well, right? So we had to be an active participant in that process to give people a degree of comfort. We also worked to anonymize the content and the data collection wherever possible. And we focused a lot on sentiment, because that really heavy data analysis that exists in the market, and there are phenomenal resources out there that we leaned on and would layer on top of. But when we take it back to really your first question, Kelly, which is that mission and how did we avoid the creep? If you're going to advocate and educate agencies, then you have to come from a position of data, right? That is what they lean on. That's what they want to read out from. Whether we're putting it into white papers or into direct conversations or answering specific questions, however we deployed it, I think there was a level of comfort that came to our members when they knew who the end consumer of that data was going to be, right? So we never really got into, that super scientific data collection. But insofar as where we did and encouraged people to share information, whether it be anecdotal or analytical, I think they all accepted that in order to move the needle with lawmakers and regulators, there has to be a degree of sophistication that comes with that type of content, because that's what those consumers or data consumers, the people who have to digest the information, and then if you want them to turn around and use it actionably, there's got to be a degree of sophistication as far as the input. And we were very lucky. I think we leaned into the right thinkers and the people who were, to your point, Kelly, able to take competition and put it in this bucket over here, right? And then put on, as Marissa mentioned, IEL hats at the very beginning and keep those hats on. And we did, a lot of good work to keep those in separate lanes.
So, and I want to jump on that too. So I've always said that when you're asking an agency something, it's one thing to ask, but you need to have background and data behind the ask, right? You can't just go and ask. That you need to know why. Why are you asking this? Why is this an important ask? Why is this impacting the industry? And that's really where that collaboration comes from, right? And again, going back to like the agency publications and everything, or an FAQ or something like that. But having all those resources and then speaking together as an organization or as a think tank, we're able to get everybody's different opinions on things. And then it really is providing that unified ask to the agencies, right? Saying, okay, this is why we know that this was published on so-and-so date, but this is how it's actually impacting from an operational standpoint or so forth. And so it's really providing the background, right? Because we all, as I mentioned, our membership consists of vendors, law firms, and servicers. So each different partner in the industry provides a different perspective. So then further supporting that ask.
Absolutely.
Not to keep going on this one, but it's just so important and critical, because what Marissa's doing in that back and forth, it's really the translation of the regs to ops. And then when it bleeds down to those other core critical vendors, you're talking about the unintended consequences that a reg may have when it wasn't directly for legal or field services or some other ancillary service that is provided, right? When you get to the boots on the ground, that's where those unintended consequences come in. And it's where the original regulation something might get lost in that translation from reg to operationalizing it, right? And so I think it's just worth really zeroing in on that point, because I think that's critical to the work that ISLE does and where we found success.
Marissa, Cade, what are some specific examples you can share where collaboration helped drive real change, whether it be for policy or industry standards?
So I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on the one that the industry has been talking about right now. It's the reminder guidance for the Commissioner's Adjusted Fair Market Value that was published in July by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. And so really, I'll had the pleasure and opportunity to go to DC in August and bring a few members with us, all from different areas of the industry, again, providing that all-around perspective and discussing with them, the thoughts and so forth behind the reminder guidance. And then we've had subsequent meetings with them. And I've always said this, and I genuinely, truly believe this. The agencies are always more than willing to talk through things and so forth, and hold meetings. And we've always been very appreciative of that. They're always very responsive. And so really kind of focusing on that, talking about some of the additional questions that may come up in reference to the reminder guidance, and the request for perhaps maybe some frequently asked questions, FAQs, and so forth. And so that's really been a big collaboration effort as of recently. So that was the one that came top to mind. But in the past, when CFPB was discussing streamlining Regulation X, we had tremendous feedback on that. That was really exciting. So many comments received by that. Nothing has happened yet with that, but it was on the unified agenda again. So I'm going to point that out. So just kind of taking hot button items like that and really discussing it in turn, within ISLE, and then of course discussing it with the agencies. It's just really, I feel it's so amazing, and I feel so privileged to be able to have this ability to talk with all these different leaders in the industry, either it be from servicers, law firms, or vendors, and then going with them and talking to the agency, because I know I've said this a lot during this podcast, but really everybody has such a unique perspective, and it really makes it more well-rounded when you're providing that unique perspective from all different areas of the industry, because there might be something that I'm thinking of and that someone else wasn't thinking of, or vice versa, right? And so it really is giving us that well-rounded picture when we're talking about things. So CAFMV is the most recent one that came to mind, because that's all I'm thinking about lately. But there's so much, and I feel so privileged. Cade?
Yeah, not necessarily underneath, but sort of tertiary to the agency strategy and the work that Marissa really leads for us. There is case law when that develops and it impacts and has to be fed up to the agency. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of show me, but that's a great example. And it was a huge, really dominating headline over the last 12 months in agency communications. We also have an amicus brief or friend of the court strategy where when relevant cases can impact default servicing or mortgage servicing in general, we partner with member law firms to author and file those briefs. We filed 3 over the last 12 months, New York, New Jersey, and Florida, and most recently the New Jersey one. That one was very successful in defense of the industry's position. So very grateful to the firms who bring those strategies to us and that opportunity. They have to have an association or a trade like ISLE in order to file those briefs. So it's a great opportunity to collaborate with members and to drive a more localized strategy. We also were very helpful in a process in Tennessee where there was a bill modernizing the foreclosure notices process in the state of Tennessee. Obviously, there's a lot of education that has to be done for local lawmakers at state houses when a bill like that is up, and they pop up, periodically across a handful of different states. Tennessee was one where I think it was like the third year trying to do something in that space and not being successful. It was finally successful this year. But our goal was to help educate lawmakers around the foreclosure process, what would truly speed it up, and what would be really in the best interest of not just servicers, but Tennesseans as well. So I think that's a strategy that can be looked at as a key success for us outside the federal efforts and the agency efforts. There is a local aspect to this. And we've tried to balance those two over the last year.
Show Me is such an important conversation. It continues to be such an important conversation. And again, that kind of goes back to like the membership, right? Because Show Me is impacting non-judicial states primarily, right? And so having the feedback from some of our member law firms in those respective states in terms of, well, if you do have to proceed judicially, this could be potentially the impact, right? If these courts may not be accustomed to handling in a judicial manner. So again, kind of going back to what I keep saying is that like having all these different perspectives, really having all that information, and Show Me will continue to be a conversation, right? As we're aware of today, USDA is the only one that actually has published finalized guidance on it. FHA has interim guidance along with the FAQ on it, and then we're still waiting on the other agency to publish something. So yeah, I mean, it continues to be such an important conversation, and I cannot believe I did not bring that up in my initial point. So thank you, Cade.
You're very welcome.
One last question for you guys, and I'll let you get back to your afternoons. If NAMFS members wanted to replicate some of your successes, what's the first step they should take for a stronger culture of collaboration?
Be open to other opinions and ideas. Collaboration is key, and don't be afraid to ask, well, what are you thinking about this? Or how about this? My motto is that it never hurts to ask, right? And I really genuinely believe in that, is that you really have to collaborate and you have to be willing to have the conversations and be willing to listen to one another, because everybody brings different perspectives to the table. And I think hearing all those different perspectives when trying to discuss how policy is impacting the industry is really critical and key. So that's my takeaway. Cade?
Yeah, I'd go back to my original point, which is narrow the focus, right? Whittle it down to 1, 2, 3 tent poles, whatever you want to call them, pillars. Find out what those biggest issues facing your members, what's the most important, what connects most directly to that membership ROI. And then figure out how you would measure success around moving the needle on any of those issues. And I would put 80% of my energy right into that sweet spot, right? And as narrow as you can get it. Because remember, you're not the only game in town. You're not the only solution. They do have other resources. The industry, across the industry, a lot of really good work is done, right? And it's finding that tiny little sliver of space where improvement can be made and focusing the effort right there. I think at ISLE, we've done a great job of acknowledging what is done well around us and leaning into that and supporting that, and then trying to fix and focus our efforts in that little bitty space where we can do something different to improve, across the board for all of us, not just legal servicing, but field services, across the board. That would be my advice, just try to boil it down.
Cade, Marissa, thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedules to help us out. Your feedback is always insightful. That's why I love partnering with you guys. And Eric, thank you to the NAMFS organization for allowing me to participate in the podcast series.
Thank you, Marissa and Cade, and thank you, Kelly. We look forward to the next episodes.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. It's a pleasure. We look forward to the great work you guys are doing.
Thank you for watching and/or listening. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. NAMFS looks forward to you joining us next Wednesday when we unlock our third episode.